What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co host, Eric Wilson. It was a really disappointing end to the New York Rangers season, of course, losing in the first round against New Jersey. Today is the breakup day. Gerard Gallant with some interesting quotes at his press conference. Artemi Panarin beating himself up in the locker room. Braden Schneider with a very depressing quote as well. Everyone is depressed, including the New York Rangers and including Fireside Rangers. We are all very upset about the ending to the season. Of course, this team had cup aspirations, had high hopes for this team to go all the way and hopefully win it. Eastern Conference Finals last year, couldn't even make it past the first round this year. And of course, all the moves that they made midway through the season, big time trade for Tarasenko, for Kane, for Mott, big moves, Stanley Cup moves, and the New York Rangers ultimately fall flat. So we're going to go ahead in this episode and kind of preview this offseason because it's going to be an interesting one for the Rangers. We could see a lot of big time changes, and we're going to briefly discuss at least one or two of those big time changes in this episode because we wanted to discuss three changes that the Rangers need to make this offseason. Now, one of them we're a little 50-50 on, but of course, we're going to have a good discussion about it. But it's going to be a long off season. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new and ring the bell so you don't miss an episode because we're going to be having plenty of discussions and analysis over all of the many moves that the Rangers can or should or do make all off season long. And of course, before we dive into this, make sure to leave a like if you enjoy this episode and comment your thoughts down below. Without further ado, Eric, how are you feeling today, my friend? And what is the first change that you think the Rangers should make this offseason?
Well, obviously, I'm very disappointed. Like you mentioned, we had a Stanley Cup caliber team that didn't even make it past round one. And, you look back closer to like the trade deadline, we were talking about all these rumors and possibilities on who we can trade for. And the biggest one was Patrick Kane. And we kind of said, like, it's going to cost a lot to get him. They were pretty much going all in right here. Jury went in, made it work. And now it kind of looks like it was all for nothing because due to the salary cap, we can't really like change the roster too much. We're most likely not going to see any like big time signings come free agency like we saw last offseason with Vincent Trocheck. So it's kind of just like out of our free agents that we have right now. Who do we want to keep? Who do we want to let go? And I think the biggest change that needs to be made right now is, I'm sorry, Patrick Kane, but you got to go. And I mainly just because one, he's too expensive to re-sign a guy like Patrick Kane. It's not going to happen. And you look at like what he contributed throughout the regular season and then the playoffs. He put up points in the playoffs. In 7 games he had 1 goal for 5 assists and 6 points. So that's not a bad stat line, but just elsewhere on the ice, he didn't really contribute much. He was one of those players in the top 6 where throughout the entire series, outside of the first 2 games, it kind of looked like he just didn't care. He was there to just skate around and make money. He didn't have that drive like that we saw throughout when he won 3 Stanley Cups with Chicago. And I get it. He's old. He's not the same player he used to be, but he didn't contribute that much. And so when it comes to who we're going to re-sign, who we're going to let go, I think definitely let Kane go and make a very strong push to re-sign Tarasenko. And Tarasenko didn't have as many points. He only had 3 goals and an assist for 4 points, but just looking at him in game 7, he was one of the few players that was skating hard. It really looked like he wanted to win, and he showed like a lot of passion and great hockey, both defensively. There were a couple times where he was diving on the ice to keep it in the zone. And I don't know, when it comes down to just the free agent forwards and the players that we like traded for at the trade deadline, yes to Tarasenko, no to Kane. First change, goodbye, Kane.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to say, but I do think that Patrick Kane is on his way out of here. I mean, when you're looking at it, I don't know if it's even possible for them to re-sign Patrick Kane. The Rangers have a lot of free agents coming up this offseason. I mean, I'll rattle off a few. Of course, we just mentioned Patrick Kane, Vladimir Tarasenko, but they also have Tyler Mott as an unrestricted free agent, Alexi Lafreniere as a restricted free agent, Keandre Miller, restricted free agent, and Nico Mikkola as an unrestricted free agent. But this is a really tough team when you're looking at the salary cap space because there's some big contracts still on the books. Of course, most notably, Artemi Panarin making over $11.6 million next season. You've got Sabanage at 8.5, Kreider 6.5. We know Trocheck just recently signed that 7-year, 5.5 per year deal with the Rangers. And even defensively, you've got Adam Fox making 9.5, Trouba with 8. The Rangers are going to be tight on money right now. We know that they ended the season tight on money. In fact, they ended the season final cap space $1,608. I didn't even know it was possible for a team to get that close to the salary cap limit. That's impressive by Chris Drury to use up every single cent that he had afforded to him under the salary cap. So when you're looking at it, a guy like Patrick Kane, I mean, he's still a legend. He's still playing at a high level. He's still going to command a lot of money. It's probably going to be a short-term deal, maybe 3 years at the maximum, whatever. But he's going to be making a lot of money on the open market. And I just don't think that the Rangers are in position to pay him. I think in reality, Tarasenko, probably the more cost-effective option there and arguably the more impactful player for the Rangers. I think, you can make the argument either way. But listen, when the Patrick Kane trade happened, we all were like, all right, the cup is ours. That's going to be the move. He's going to show up in the postseason, just dominate as he always does, and the Rangers are going to win the cup. That didn't happen. And honestly, he really didn't gel with the team the way that we hoped for him to. As soon as the trade was made, we were like, hell yeah, Patrick Kane, Artemi Panarin, reunited. This is going to be sick. Never became sick. They barely even played together because they couldn't even gel together. And I have to say, I almost feel like maybe you could argue that adding Patrick Kane to the mix hurt the team more than it helped the team in some ways, because I think that they started to play really well after the Tarasenko trade. The team looked good. They threw Kane into the lines. They looked terrible before finally getting good once again. But I don't know if the team ever really gelled with Patrick Kane or if he really ever gelled with the team. So a disappointing little experiment there. We knew that it was a swing for the fences type move. We knew that it was a move that could either make Chris Drury go down in infamy as one of the greatest GMs in history, or it could cost him and maybe even Gerard Gallant his job. And that's kind of the next change that we want to talk about. And again, we're a little 50-50 on this one, but a coaching change might need to be the big change that the Rangers make. And I'll give my take on this one first, Eric, because I'm not the biggest Gerard Gallant fan. I don't think that he really has the capabilities of bringing this team to the Stanley Cup. Listen, he kind of just had some quotes today. He basically said that he's disappointed to be answering these questions from the media, asking him about his job security. He doesn't think they're warranted. They had a lot of success over the last 2 seasons, averaged over 100 points per year, made it to the postseason both years, of course, made it to the ECF last year. These were the things that he mentioned in his little rant that he went on in his press conference. But at the end of the day, this Rangers fan base is not satisfied with playoff appearances, especially considering the moves that they made midseason. There had to be some way for a coach to figure out how to gel this team together. I mean, this team was stacked. Look at these lines. Look at how there was a superstar on every single line. I mean, at least on the first 2 lines, just filled. The top 6 was filled with stars, with bona fide stars. And somehow Gerard Gallant couldn't find the way to win with this team. If he can't find the way to win with this team is not going to have as stacked of a roster next year as it did for this playoff run. If he can't win with this team, how is he going to win with a less stacked roster? That's just kind of my take on it. I don't think that the team really rallies behind Gallant the way that we would hope for them to. I think that he's very inconsistent. Listen, there were some times where, early in the season, we were talking about potentially him being on the hot seat. I think after this year, a disappointing ending, not being able to make it past the first round, and I think not making the adjustments necessary to win that game 7. That in the second period, they really did have a legitimate chance. That third period was atrocious. Everything fell apart for them. Really the second half of the second period. But there was a chance there for the Rangers to put up some points, to really make some moves, put up some points, and hopefully win the game. It didn't happen for them, but overall, the series should have never even gone to a game 7. After winning those first 2 games, a new goalie in net, and then all of a sudden the Rangers just can't score a single goal. Come on. So I don't know. That's really my take on it. I don't think that Gallant does enough to propel this team further. I think the players can carry us as far as they want, but you need a coaching change, in my opinion, to really take that next step, get through the postseason, get into the Stanley Cup Finals. But I know I'm sure there's going to be people who disagree with me. I'd love to hear the thoughts down below in the comment section. But Eric, I'll turn it over to you. What are your thoughts on Gerard Gallant, maybe on some of the comments that he made today in his press conference, but really on his performance throughout the season and whether or not you think he should be back in 2023?
Yeah, I'm a little 50-50 on this topic because everything you said about Gerard Gallant is true, but he's also done pretty great things for this team, in just 2 seasons, back-to-back seasons with over 100 points at the end of the regular season. Last season, he took us all the way to the conference finals, within 2 games of making it to the finals. And then you can we lost in the first round this year. You could blame it on him. You could say it was just a bad year. Maybe the Devils were just better. But But like, I don't know, because like you're right, like the team doesn't really rally behind him, and he's like a little too cocky. Like you hear him in these interviews, and he's like, "Well, I don't really even know why I'm answering these questions about like the status of my job." Like it's at a certain point, like, he needs to take a level of accountability. But even if it's his fault, if it's the player's fault, something needs to change, right? After a disappointing year, the Rangers were coming up on 30 years since the Rangers last won the Cup, and it's something isn't working. Something needs to change. And as we mentioned back with like the salary cap and all these like long-term, high-paying contracts, you really can't make that many changes to the roster other than just like letting go of some free agents. So when it comes to like changing something, and then you turn your head towards the management, and you're not going to fire Chris Drury. Chris Drury is like a masterclass general manager where, you went out and did all these things. So then it really just comes down to Gerard Gallant. Like, is it a coaching problem? And if the Rangers were to fire him, I wouldn't be mad. I would understand. I don't know if I would agree, but I would understand. But then the only problem that comes with it is who is the coach out there that's gonna replace him and ultimately bring the Rangers deeper into the playoffs and win a Stanley Cup. And like, I know Joel Quenneville is a coach out there. He's older, has a lot of experience. He was the coach of the Blackhawks when they won their 3 cups in 5 years. I know Daryl Sutter just got fired by Calgary, but there's been like recent players that come out and said that he like poisoned the locker room and people would walk through the halls in fear. But then, like, at the same time, like, is that something the Rangers need? Like some form of accountability where they were like throughout this playoffs that no one was trying, no one cared, and Gerard Gallant apparently didn't do anything about it. He kind of just accepted it and let them play their own game. But it's like, so I don't know. There's coaches out there, but they're very limited. And I guess out of everyone out there, Joel Quenneville would be the person I would want to replace Gallant. But at the same time, I don't know. It's risky. Is like I'm still 50-50 on it. And I guess we're going to have to just wait and see what happens, because like I said, this could have just been a bad year. Kane could have been the problem. Who knows what the problem was, but we're still breaking it down. All I know is something needs to change. Can't really change the roster too much. Start to look at management. Consider your options there.
Yeah, I think that's really the main thing. Just time to consider different options, see if there's anything else that's out there that's available and could hopefully propel the Rangers to win more playoff games. I'm not saying that I'm 100% for firing Gerard Gallant, but I'm definitely not 100% for keeping him. And I think that, over the next several weeks, of course, we'll dive into different options that the Rangers could look at. We'll take a look at some of these coaching options that might be out there to replace Gerard Gallant if they do decide to move on from him. So we'll break those down on this channel. So make sure to stay tuned and subscribe. But I do think that it's going to be interesting because, some people will argue you're just scapegoating Gallant. And it's like, yeah, maybe we are because we're frustrated over the failure of the Rangers postseason. I mean, this postseason was a failure. But I think that there's a lot to it in terms of the inconsistencies throughout the regular season. I think the best coaches bring a team together consistently. And I think that Gerard Gallant, he made a lot of changes to try and bring the team back when they had their down periods. But the overall inconsistency throughout the regular season really foreshadowed the inconsistency that we saw in the postseason. I mean, we would have periods where 2 games in a row, the Rangers are dominating. 2 games later, they suck. That happened all regular season long. And then, of course, it happened in the first round of the postseason. And it cost them. And I don't think you can necessarily say that the players are to blame for being so inconsistent all the time. There has to be something more to it, in my opinion. That's just the way I look at it. I'm not trying to scapegoat Kane, not trying to scapegoat Gallant. But I do think that as we continue to evaluate into this offseason, it'll be interesting to see what consensus decision all of the fans make on Gerard Gallant. But I don't think he's doing himself any favors with this postseason press conference. And another thing that I'll say about Gallant, and then this is going to tie into the third point that we're going to make in terms of the third change that we think the Rangers need to make. I think defensively, this team has struggled a lot under Gerard Gallant. Like, they just haven't been a good defensive team the entire time that he's been here. Even last year, I think defense really was the problem. And also consistency was the problem. So you're talking about 2 years in a row. We're seeing the same issues, no improvements, despite having a revamped and rebuilt roster. So again, maybe that's just feeding more into the Gerard Gallant decision. Maybe I'm making my mind up right now as we discuss this. But defense, I think defensively, you'll see the defensemen often way out of position, trying to do way too much, trying to get involved in the attacking game plan. And I almost have to feel like that's maybe something that Gerard Gallant encourages and he tells them to do. And maybe that leads to a lot of the inconsistencies of the defense and a lot of inconsistencies of the team. Because I mean, in this game 7 that we just saw versus the Devils, Keandre Miller did not play well. Adam Fox did not play well. But Keandre Miller had some really terrible plays out there. And it was almost like he was being told, get up there, get involved in the offense, because he was just forcing himself into horrible positions. And then he was way out of position, and then he's tripping players. He's trying to fight back. He's letting up goals. Like, one of those goals was literally just 1,000% Keandre Miller's fault. And I just think that overall, when I watch the Rangers play under Gerard Gallant, I just see such an inconsistent defense, and I see way too many defensemen trying way too hard to get involved offensively. That's my take on it. But I just think that the defense needs to change. That's the third change that we want to discuss, third point here. So, Eric, I'll let you give your take on it. How do you change the defense? What do you think needs to change? And do you think that Gerard Gallant has any influence over the mentality of these defensemen and kind of the inconsistency that we see from their performances?
I mean, I'll start off by saying, yeah, Gerard Gallant definitely does, where if your players are out there playing bad and doing stuff that they're not supposed to be doing, it's up to you as a coach to kind of just get them back in line and make sure that they're doing what they need to be doing. So where the Rangers defense is consistently inconsistent, like at some point you got to start to blame Gallant a little bit. And I think the biggest problem with the defense, like you kind of mentioned, is they try to contribute too much offensively. And I understand that that's a good thing. Like Adam Fox, despite having like a really abysmal game 7, is a really good offensive defenseman. He scores a lot of points and he plays really good defense as well. Now, then you look at a guy like Keandre Miller, where, yeah, he scores goals, he scores assists and puts up a lot of points, but then he's a really good defenseman. You know, he got drafted in the first round for a reason. Like, he's good, but sometimes he just has these games where, like you mentioned, he will cause goals. Like, it'll be entirely Keandre Miller's fault. And, you know, to mention it a third time, like, we can't change the roster that much. Like, we're not going to go out there and sign a big name defenseman. We can't really trade for a big name defenseman. So the only really change I can see being made to the defense right now is don't re-sign Keandre Miller. Let him walk, go somewhere else. Because you look at all of our prospects, the Rangers are very, very full of defensive prospects. You know, you got Zach Jones. He played a little bit at the beginning of the season alongside Braden Schneider. They didn't really pair well together, but who knows? Maybe you put him next to Ryan Linger and things will change. Matt Robertson also is another defensive prospect that we haven't really seen him in the NHL at all. But point is, we got a lot of prospects out there who are young, good, can be called up, and it might just be time to see Keandre Miller go. I love him. I love Keandre Miller. He's a great player. He's a great guy too, but I don't know. And on the roster with the problems that we have, there's only so many solutions to these problems, and that might just have to be one of them.
Yeah, that might be the problem. I mean, listen, Zach Jones, Matthew Robertson, Keandre Miller being a free agent, Adam Fox, I think, I'm still confident in him. Yes, a bad game 7, but we still need him. I think that he is our best defenseman, and I want to see him expand and continue to perform well for the Rangers. But really, just overall, something needs to change with the defense, whether it be a coaching change with the defense, whether it be really retooling the entire personnel. Something has to change. So really just to round that out, go over the 3 points or the 3 changes that we think the Rangers need to make once again. Try your best to keep Tarasenko, but it's probably time to say goodbye to Patrick Kane. Coaching change potentially, and of course, changing the defense altogether. I think it needs to be revamped and rebuilt. It's a very young defensive unit compared to the offense, but a lot of inconsistency from that unit that ultimately cost the Rangers their season. So those are our 3 changes that we think the Rangers should make. Let us know what changes you think they should make down below in the comment section. Of course, give us your thoughts and opinions on everything that we said in this episode. We'd love to interact with you guys, and we will absolutely make sure to comment back and discuss these points with you down below in the comment section. And of course, make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and we will catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Rangers.
Let's go Rangers.